Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and the viewer, wherever you are. My name is Mr. Tukuta. I'm a senior lecturer at GS College, Sibande, TVET College. Our campus is at Sibande C2 campus. So I'll be teaching public finance N5. So it's a good subject for public officials, especially if you want to find yourself at a public institution, from the local government to provincial, the national government. So we are about to start with our introduction. So the question is, what is public finance? Public finance is the study of government activities which may include spending, deficit, and taxation. All the government activities that are happening in all government levels, national, provincial, and the local government. This includes spending on how our government, from national, provincial to local government, they spend our money. So it's very much important that as a citizen, we must hold the public official, the politician, to accountable to all the money or the resources that they are spending. So including spending, deficit, and taxation. So we have the components of public finance. The taxation. Remember that one of our government sources of revenue, or you can say income, is taxation. So that is where our government collects money through SARS on behalf of government. We have taxation collection as components of public finance. We have national debt, expenditure, national budget, deficit, and surplus. So the study of government collect and spend money and the real resources, because we also have to know that it's not only money or funds or in the form of money. So we do have some capital, maybe in the form of resources or assets that the government, our government, from national, provincial to local government, where we must hold them accountable of all the resources. If you can see, as you can see, or if you followed the news from local, provincial, national, you could see that there's a lot of mismanagement of the money, fruitless expenses, corruption that involve from local to the provincial and the national government. So, how do government collect and spend money? Our government collects money through taxes. So SARS collect money or taxes on behalf of our government. So, what is the role of government? To maintain and improve the welfare of the people, to maintain and improve the welfare of the people. So in other words, is the responsibility of our government from local to provincial and national government to make sure that all our lives as a citizen of this country, our life should be improved with the money and the resources that we trusted that they are going to make sure that the money, assets, or any resources is spent efficiently and effectively. to protect the people from harm, to provide the institutions that allow market to function. For example, protection of property rights, to provide the essential goods and services that markets fail to adequately provide. Then, we have what we call a government approach. So we'll speak about the laissez-faire approach, socialist approach, and also democratic approach. So those are the ideology that our government or political organization, when they are elected in the government, they applied those ideology in the form of policies. It went to the legislature, then it became the law. So it's very much important that we are aware of our organization, political organization, about the ideology, the way they think, or the way they think this country can be the better or best country for now. So, with the laissez approach, so this one, it implies let it be or let them do as they wish. So in other words, with the laissez approach or ideology, government that practice this ideology, leadership, give all rights and power to make decisions. So it gives all rights and power, for example, to workers to make decisions. The second approach or ideology is the democratic approach, which I believe most in our country, that is the approach that we're using, because our country in South Africa, we are a democratic country. So we are a democratic country. So in the form of government in which citizens have power, so in our government, we all have power through voting or election. So we have power to change the government. It's either a national government, provincial government, and the local government. So that is the approach that we are using in our country. So citizens exercise this power directly through their representative. So in other words, we as voters or taxpayers, we elect the representative through the political organizations, maybe we'll be listening to their campaign, what is that they want to do for us, what is the plan about, for example, the poor people, this is their plan they're planning to do, concerning either education and so on. So they elect in free electoral system. They elect in free electoral system. So the main principle of democratic approach, number one, political system for electing and replacing government through free and fair election in order to avoid dictatorship or one-party system. Political system for electing, so that is where we elect a political organization to power. So with the hope that the political organization, they are going to elect a good cadre who are going to represent our interests as citizens or the taxpayers. So one of the main principles, so under democratic approach, is that South Africa is a respective for rule of law, respect for rule of law. So according to our constitution, it's available. We have the Bill of Rights that is there to protect each and everyone equally so. The other main principle, the importance of separating power in democratic state. So it divides the authority of government. For example, we have legislature, we have executive, we have a judiciary approach. So the constitution of the South African contains an important democratic principle, separation of power. So in other words, this divide the power of government among three different interdependent arms. So we have the executive, which is made of the president, and his national executive. So we can talk about the deputy presidents and his ministers. So president is the head of the state under the executive, together with the deputy president and also the ministers and the deputy ministers. So it prepared, initiated legislation that is submit. So with the legislation, so the national legislature or parliament consists of two houses. We have a National Assembly and we have a National Council of Province. National Assembly and the National Council of Province. And remember that with the National Assembly, that is where they elect the head of the state, Then the president then will elect or choose the deputy president and the ministers that he or she wanted them to serve in the parliament. So we also have the judiciary. It's one of the third arm that we have, which is made of the Constitution, the Supreme Court of Appeal, High Court, and the Magistrate Court. So what is a democratic values and how democratic value worked in our government? So democratic government should always try to spend financial resources fairly. In a democratic values, democratic government should always try to spend financial resources fairly, equally to each and everyone. And we must bear in mind that the resources that we have or money that we have in our government is not enough. It's not enough. But even though it's not enough, so it's the responsibility of the government that to make sure whatever we have from national, provincial, and the local must be shared equally and fairly. Sure, democratic values should always try to involve taxpayer when they make financial decisions. Under democratic values, should always try to involve the taxpayers when they make financial decisions. But in most of the cases, we find that in our country, as a taxpayers or voters, we are not involved in the decision in the parliament, legislature, from national, provincial to local government. We are not included, but according to our constitution is that we should be included because we are a democratic country. So only elected representatives must set taxes. So that's the format that we have in our government. Only representative members of the parliament that you as a voter or taxpayer, you voted him or her to represent you in the parliament. So in other words, whoever that you represent, irrespective of the political party that you voted, if you voted it and found yourself in a parliament, it's going to represent you. It's either you like it or not. You like it or not. But the only challenge that we have is that they are not accountable, or we don't hold them accountable, and so on. Then, elected representative must account to taxpayer. Elected representative must account to taxpayer. So if you have voted Cyril Ramaphosa to the parliament, so as a voter or taxpayer, it's your responsibility that you hold him account for everything that is happening, because you trusted him that is going to represent your interests. So we have the responsibility and the accountability in public finance. So one of the issues that we have from local, provincial, and local, provincial, national governments, that our leaders that we elected them in the parliament, national, provincial, and local, so they don't want to take responsible. They don't want to take responsibilities of everything or all the activities or action that they found themselves in. Responsibility and accountability in public finance. Number one, a person cannot be accountable without being responsible. So you should be accountable and responsible. Accountability is one of the principles of democratic financial system. Accountability is one of the principles of democratic financial system. Means political office bearer and public officials must publicly account for their activities and action. A political office bearer and public official must publicly account for their activity and action. Political office bearer is either, could be ANC, DA, EFF, whoever that you elected there to represent you. So the aim of accountability is to prevent misuse of public fund, like what we are seeing there happening. We have seen news before COVID-19 and even after COVID-19. There's a lot of corruption that is involved in our government, from national, provincial, and the local government. So the aim is to prevent misuse of funds or resources obtained from taxes. So the role of central government and provincial and local government in financing public institutions. Number one, the Public Finance Management Act and its regulation govern financial management in the national and provincial government department government. This government and department manage all income, expenses, the assets, and the liability. So this government and all the departments that we have, for example, we have a Department of Education, Finance, we have many, tourism, and so on. So this government and department manage all income of the department, expenses, the money that they spend, the asset that the government or the local, national, provincial government they have, and all the liability. So the role of national legislature, the National Legislature of South Africa is a representative institution whereby we elect a political organization to represent us in the parliament, from the local or municipal government to provincial and the national government. Means group of elected people act on behalf of citizens. So those, if you have elected a political organization, let's say a political organization is ABC, so you believe that ABC is going to represent you in the parliament or in the legislature. So the legislature is a political institution that makes, amend, and repeal laws for the citizen, including law on public financial matter. So the legislature is a political institution that make and amends or passes laws for the citizen in the parliament, from the national, provincial to local, including law on public financial matter, on how local government, provincial, national government planning to spend our money. So the legislature at the central government level is a parliament. The legislature at the central government, we call it a parliament. So let's talk about the imposing taxes and allocation. Legislature imposes taxes and allocate the money. So as I was saying, that they amend and make laws in the legislature. So legislature imposes taxes and allocate the money. So it's their responsibility and duties to make sure that all the departments, small or big, or the municipality, big or small, they have allocated the money according to the needs of the community or of the people on that particular area. So the money collected, we will know that the money is collected by SARS on behalf of the government, so allocated to various public services when the legislature approved the national budget. And remember that imposing taxes and allocating funds, it's a political issue. So when a government of the day or the parliament decide, or ministers, the president in the parliament, they decided to impose or to amend any law, maybe in the form of tax and allocate funds, is political issue. So the government or the parliament, in the parliament, the president can decide, for example, president or a minister can decide, no, let's increase a VAT, for example. As you know that currently our VAT is at 15%, and they decide, no, we are going to increase to 16%. So when the law is introduced in the parliament, so all the members of the parliament, they have a mandate or responsibility to debate about whatever a political party, so or any member of the parliament want it to be done, for example. So they base an ideology, and sometimes it's more important than objective. So most of the decisions that they do in the parliament is based on their ideology, the way they think, they see things. So that is derived from their policies. So one of their mandates is to make sure that all their policies from their political organization, they are amended to become a law in our government. So the main responsibility of the legislature, number one, to impose taxes, collect funds on behalf. Remember that the SARS is the one who will collect SARS on behalf of the government. Number three, safeguarding public fund. Make sure that our money is protected, is controlled. Determine consumer tariff, allocate public fund, effective spending. So they need to make sure that there is effective and efficiently spending. Let's talk about the Auditor General. The Auditor General. So the Auditor General is appointed by the President in the Parliament. So he's given the mandate by the legislature. So after the auditor do an audit from the department, public institution, national government, provincial government, he or she must go back and report to the legislature. So the Auditor General must be able to demand financial statements of the government, local government, provincial, public institution, like ESCOM, Transnet. He or she must have an access of all records and documents. He must have an access of all records, documents, access department account, someone in official to testify if there's a need, if there's maybe an irregularity that happened there. He or she can summon anyone, any official to testify, and also cross-examine any official. They can also cross-examine any official, determine whether public funds spent efficiently and efficiently. So that is when he or she will go to the parliament or to the legislature to give the report. Let's talk about the NPA, National Prosecution Authority. So this one, they have a power to start criminal proceeding on behalf of state. They have a power to start criminal proceeding on behalf of state. Do everything necessary to prosecute criminal. So if there's a valid evidence, so they have a duty or responsibility to make sure that there is a criminal proceeding. Stop criminal proceeding, for example. They can also stop criminal proceeding. Then we have a treasury. So the treasury must ensure that State Department and institution interpret the financial policies of the government correctly and carry out them effectively. So treasury, they must make sure that State Department and institution interpret the financial policy, because we have many policies that involve the financial matters of our government or of our public institution. So their mandate or duty is to make sure that they are able to interpret those financial policies for them to avoid misuse, irregularity, maladministration, and other things. So function of this treasury is more like the legislature. One of the functions is to safeguard the public funds, make sure that our money is spent effectively and efficiently, coordinate financial policy, revise national budget. So it's one of the functions. Control purchase and buying procedures. Control when the government, department, institution, local government, provincial, national, they purchase it's either it's a goods or services, or when they are buying, the procedures are followed. The control, stock and store. So it's one of the functions of the treasurer to make sure that stock and stores is controlled. Let's look at we talk about Auditor General, NPA, treasurer, then the accounting officer. Okay, the role of accounting officer, prepare department budget. So is the responsibility of the accounting officer to make sure that department budget is draft or is prepared. So account for the resources they use. So accounting officer, it could be a director general, could be head of department, and also chief financial officer. The president can also be the accounting officer, the premier, the MEC, and so on. So account for the resources they use. They must be accountable. They must be accountable for the resources they use. So in their respective department. Manage finances. So it's one of their responsible to manage all the finances. That include resources or all the capitals. Implement policy and achieve policy objective. Because each and every policy, it has its own objective. So they must make sure that their responsibility is to make sure that policy are implemented, maybe from the national, provincial to local government. They are implemented and their objective achieved. Then, thank you very much. I hope you have learned a lot. Let's meet other day. Thank you.